Good evening, everyone. If you're here on the East Coast, if you're in California, you're just picking out your favorite surfboard. Thank you for being part of the two-way experience. This program is called Two-Way Tonight. On this program, we have a fantastic guest who will tell you everything about everything. We'll review the day's news. We'll look forward. We'll look backward, sideways. And then, after we've kicked things around, a little O. Henry twist always comes. We'll take your questions and comments if you're here on the platform and want to be part of the conversation. Raise your hand. We'd love to hear from you. And let's do one of those episodes where if we don't get three news people, we cancel the show. Let's try that. So if you've never raised your hand and you'd like to save the program, please raise your hand. Be part of the conversation. If you're watching on X or on YouTube, you might be tempted to put smack in the chat. Don't do it. Don't give in to your worse angels. Extend the presumption of grace to all. Let peace, love, and understanding imbue your every thought. Why would you put smack in the chat? You know, what's interesting is you really hear smack when we call on members of the community to talk. Why is that? Because they have to put their name, their face, their voice, their likeness, their reputation to the public utterances. Why not apply that same standard? Even if your handle is slushbunny42, no smack in the chat. Thank you very much for your attention to that matter. If you're familiar with my point of view about the news, you know that I see a lot of important stories. I see a lot of interesting stories. All that matters is the U.S.-China existential struggle for supremacy. Will the Chi-Coms win or will Uncle Sam win? That's really the only story I really think is important, in all honesty. And so we've been talking on the platform for a couple days about the Chinese, once again, withholding these rare earth minerals that are essential for everything and raising again my question. Scott Bessent, genius, certified genius. I mean, I think even his critics would say certified genius. How do you tell the president of the United States charge into war with the Chi-Coms on trade when they hold the ultimate trump card? And I say that pun intended. How could you do that? Because do they need access to the U.S. market? Yes, they do. Do they want our chips? Yes, they do. All sorts of things. There's all sorts of things that Chinese want and need from us. But ain't nothing that we have, even the access to the American market, that is as leverageable as their rare earth minerals. And I've never understood, and we've seen flare-ups in the past where the Chinese have suggested they're going to withhold them. And then Scott Bessent goes to some European capital and has some meetings, and then they back down. Well, the Chinese did it again 2 days ago, yesterday, I don't know, yesterday. And so the president was saying, well, maybe we won't have our meeting on the sidelines of the meeting in Seoul, the international conference in Seoul. And then today, 100% tariffs, the president says, 100% tariffs on Chinese. So now we're in a trade war. And again, the Chinese really want the meeting. They would like some sort of concord, some sort of conclave, some sort of communication. But the markets didn't like it. The markets have accepted all sorts of problems and announcements and uncertainties, but they didn't like this. U.S. markets, I don't know what they do today, plunge, collapsed, gave back gains. What would Andrew Ross Sorkin say? Alls I know is there's lots of other stories we'll cover today. There's lots of other important news, Middle East and shutdown and indictments. But this is what I call big casino. Big casino. What's going to happen here? I suspect the Chinese will back down and pretend they're going to cooperate again on the rare earth minerals. But it just shows you, it's just, I have been less of a critic of the trade gambit, the trade scheme. I say scheme in the British sense, not the American sense, than many others have, because I have said, I believe my sources from 2024 during the campaign who said Trump doesn't love tariffs. He loves the tool of tariffs. Trump is going to try to change the United States relationship with all these countries who rip us off. He's right about his prescription. I mean, his analysis of what's been happening. And unlike our previous presidents, slaves to free trade for the most part, he had a plan to do something about it. Downside for sure, tariffs are not good for the economy. Any Econ 101 class will tell you that. But he had a plan, and then after Liberation Day, the market started to adjust, and some of these countries started to give the United States better deals. Are we making every iPhone in the U.S.? No. Are the tariff and non-tariff barriers gone? No. But a president is doing something with strategy and a brilliant Secretary of State and a very able trade representative and Howard Lutnick to try to change the rules of the game. Great, but again, you can't. They're going. Here's a clumsy metaphor. It's like, okay, let's go to war with the Chinese. They've got guns, we've got guns. They've got slingshots, we've got slingshots. They've got drones, we have drones. Oh, they have nuclear weapons. Oh, we don't have nuclear weapons, and they're not afraid to use their nuclear weapons. This rare earth minerals thing, I do not understand the strategy that's predicated on going to war with them when all they have to do is say we're cutting off the rare earth minerals. Now, I'm no expert. Many of you are delighted to point out 3 or 4 times a week, Mark, you're not an expert on something you talked about. I'm not, but I am from the Trump school on this. The experts had their chance. So I know a little bit about this stuff. I know enough to know that every time the Chinese say they're going to cut off the rare earth minerals, it really screws up our attempt to try to leverage the advantages we have as a country. And I don't see anything that we have that's close to what they have. So there's long-term plans to try to get them elsewhere, try to develop them, get them from Ukraine or Greenland or whatever. But in this immediate trade battle and during the 3 years that President Trump has left in office, I don't see a way around this to win this fight. And winning the fight with the Chinese, military, diplomatic, economic, spheres of influence, is predicated on getting leverage over Xi. You've heard me say it 100 times. The job of President of the United States is basically how do you get leverage over Xi, Putin, and Netanyahu. President Trump, just in the last couple of days, has demonstrated he's got one of those three figured out. And on the other two, doesn't have a lot figured out. Next to none over Putin. And while the Chinese want access to the American market, and that gives us some leverage, I just don't see what the solution is for the rare earth minerals thing. I just don't see it. So we'll talk about that with our guests. As I said, there is other news. Middle East continues along. We'll talk about that. The First Lady and the President both made their surprise announcements today, shrouded in secrecy. The First Lady's is actually fascinating. It has to do with Russia. That's the kind of tease they do on cable news. Drives me crazy. Tell us the news. The news is that she has some back channel with Putin to help reunite Ukrainian children with their families. It's an incredible story, which we'll talk about. And then the president announcements has to do with AstraZeneca, signing some deal with the federal government. As I said, shutdown news. MSNBC says criminal charges expected against Bolton. Apparently, there was some sort of threats made against the lives of Benny Johnson, the conservative talker. And there's some stuff going on in the 2025 races, New Jersey, New York, and Virginia. We will talk about it all with our guests. Jill Abramson, one of the great stalwart stars of this platform in its early days, who's been absent for a variety of reasons I still don't fully understand, but happy to welcome Jill here back tonight. Democratic strategist Frank O'Brien and Beverly Hallberg, Republican strategist. All three will be here in just a moment. We'll run through a bunch of news. And then again, if you want to get in on the conversation, please raise your hand. And if we don't get three people who've never been on this program before in the community to raise their hand, that's it. Show's canceled. So please, if you'd like to save the show, raise your hand if you've never talked before. And I'll say, we've done this gambit on both this show and the morning meeting. Never failed. We've never failed to get three people when I've demanded it. Let's see what happens tonight. Be intriguing. All right. Here's a word from our first sponsor before we get going. Bring our guests in. Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth makes products viscose made from bamboo. You've no doubt, I suspect correctly that I'm currently wearing my Cozy Earth pants, but they're so much more than pants. Yes, they are. Cozy Earth bamboo sheets, very comfortable, very cooling when it's hot out, very warm in the colder nights. A kind of a magical material. The Bubble Cuddle blanket is a fan favorite. You can buy that too. A combination of comfort and style. And then, of course, all the bedding comes with a 100-day return, 10-year money-back guarantee, 10-year warranty, rather. And right now, you can get all the Cozy Earth products, 20% off. Pants, joggers, shirts, everything. 20% off if you go to CozyEarth.com. Put in the promo code 2WAY for 20% off, because home isn't just where you live, ladies and gentlemen. It's how you feel. Let's go home with Cozy Earth. Again, CozyEarth.com, promo code 2WAY Thank you for your attention to the pants. All right, let's bring in our guests. First, I think everybody's going to want an explanation. I'm sure Jill's going to blame us, but Jill Abramson, thanks for coming back. Where have you been? Is this our fault or your fault that you haven't been on this show since, I don't know, the Roosevelt years? Why haven't you been here?
Well, I've been watching on YouTube because, I don't feel I need to take up everybody's valuable time on two-way asking my questions or making comments. So I haven't been gone. I just haven't been visible
All
to
right,
you.
how have the shows been lately?
I think good.
Good.
Lately, I'm in midterms in my other career as a college professor, so I haven't been as loyal.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for coming
But I'm
back.
with you.
We
I'm
love
with
having
you.
we love having you on. Thank you for being here. Beverly has been on regularly and is also a fan favorite. Beverly, thank you for being here. Tell folks turning in for the first time, what do you do for a living? What your connection to public policy politics is?
I have a company called District Media Group where I work full time helping people prepare for media interviews. So lots of members of Congress, senators, CEOs, policy activists, getting them ready for shows like this. But I do have one question, Jill. Your dog is adorable. What's your dog's name?
Magic.
What is it?
Magic,
Magic.
magic, like
Magic.
like
Oh,
Irvin Magic Johnson.
yeah. Magic is a star tonight, I just have to
Yeah,
say.
yeah. It's
I'm gonna tell
all anybody's doing is looking at magic. Beverly, thank you for coming back. Very grateful to you. Frank, I believe, is making his two-way debut, if I'm not mistaken. Frank, am I
That's
right about
correct.
that?
Yeah, that's right.
Welcome in, Frank. I'm so happy to see you here. Frank writes an extraordinary Substack, which he'll tell you about in a moment, and I recommend to you. Probably some of you say, I got too many Substacks in my life. Well, if that's how you feel, kill out three of them and add Frank's. You won't regret it. Frank is. Imagine if Jill, don't take this the wrong way. Imagine if Tom Edsel just calmed down a little bit. That would be Frank's Substack. Just Tom Edsel, calm down just a little bit. Frank, tell folks first about your Substack and then your connection to public policy, elective politics.
Yeah. So my Substack is called 2026 Path to Persuasion. It looks the title suggests, it looks at from a Democratic perspective. It looks at the next year's races and eventually 2028 races, and some of the messaging challenges that the party's confronting and that our candidates are confronting, and tries to decipher paths around some of those challenges. My broader career, for 40 years, I ran a democratic and progressive direct response fundraising and communications company. Worked for a lot of Democratic candidates and progressive groups and charities. Besides the Substack, I have a Monday kind of memo called the Monday Memo Message on Memo. Monday Memo on Message, which is for more broadly for nonprofit organizations, less political than the Substack, about sort of how nonprofits can communicate more persuasively.
Frank, who's the best president in your estimation since Reagan, and why?
Best president since Reagan. You know, I guess I'd give it to Obama, but probably Obama, because I think he carried off a pretty incredible social change just by getting elected, and like every candidate, every president probably since Reagan, his presidency itself was kind of hampered, partly by his own strategies and partly by the polarized political environment that may be intense now, but has actually been a feature of our politics for decades.
Yep. All right. Last one, just so people get to know you, because not everyone's had the benefit I have of reading your subject. Who's the best Republican president since Reagan, and why?
Best Republican president since Reagan. I guess Bush.
Which one? We had a couple.
The son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
I think he handled 9/11 incredibly well. I think he lots of policies of his that I would disagree with, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think he was a decent guy and did a did a decent job in the presidency for most of his run.
All right, last one, and you don't need to answer this at great length because you could write a book about this. Give me in like a paragraph. Why did Trump win in 2016?
Biggest reason,
Yeah.
because the Democratic Party abandoned working class voters for decades.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you all for being here. Let's talk about the China thing, because again, as you know, I think it's the biggest story. Here's the Wall Street Journal headline. Somebody called me after the rare earth minerals thing happened and said, will the Trump administration retaliate? And I said, I don't think so. I think they'll just tell Xi to back down. Well, I was wrong. I was wrong. Trump hits China. This is the Wall Street Journal for those of you listening to the podcast. Trump hits China with additional 100% tariff, citing restrictions on rare earth elements. President also says he will impose new export controls on critical software products in response to Beijing's move. Here's the president's Truth Social post about an hour and a half ago. This is number 8, Sam, please. This goes on and on. It has just been learned that China has taken the extraordinary aggressive position on trade and sending an extremely hostile letter to the world stating that they're going to, effective November 1, 2025, impose large-scale export controls on virtually every product they make, and some not even made by them. This affects all countries without exception and was obviously a plan devised by them years ago. It is absolutely unheard of in international trade and a moral disgrace in dealing with other nations. It goes on. Based on the fact that China has taken this unprecedented position and speaking only for the USA and not other nations who are similarly threatened, starting November 1st, 2025 or sooner, depending on any further actions or changes taken by China, the United States of America will impose a tariff of 100% on China over and above any tariff they are currently paying. Also on November 1st, we will impose export controls on any and all critical software. It is impossible to believe that China would have taken such an action, but they have, and the rest is history. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Obviously calls into question whether the president and Xi will meet, as I said before, on the sidelines of the APEC meeting in Korea. Markets did not like this. Here's number 9, please. Markets plummet after Trump-China tariffs threat, says CNBC. S&P 500 declines the most since April. And here, courtesy of our friends in the Abramson Group, are the market results, all in the red. Dow Jones down almost 900 points, S&P down almost 200, NASDAQ down over 800. Just hideous. Jill, what is this all about? Where does this go? What does this mean for America?
Well, it could go two ways, pretty obviously. One would be the cancellation of the meeting and an escalation in a hostile relationship that the USA still has with China. Markets are not going to like that. We can expect to see more declines. I don't know. I mean, the 100% tariff just seems kind of unrealistic. I was going to say nutty, but so extreme that you almost think it's not serious.
Yeah, it's a little cartoonish, 100%. Frank, are you alarmed by this, or you think it'll all just work itself out before November 1st?
I feel like we've had a year of expecting cataclysmic events every time Trump did something incredible on tariffs and not quite seeing them come to pass. I suspect that may be what happens here again. It always seems like, and it's not just not just a taco phenomenon. It's just that I think events. Everybody seems to sort of go to the brink and then back off a little bit, and then go to the brink and then back off again. I'm guessing that will happen again.
Okay, Beverly.
Yeah, there's been a lot of concerns in the past few months when the trade deals were first being discussed with other countries, how catastrophic it may be. But of course, Trump has used this as a leverage point to make certain statements to hopefully find negotiation. So I find what he may put out in the public is different than the meetings going on behind closed doors. So I think we look at this and just say, we don't know. All of us hope it doesn't get to this point. But is this just part of how Trump views tariffs as purely a negotiation deal? And I'm someone who is not a fan of tariff wars, of course, but also tariffs in general. But I will say, if he's trying to get better trade deals, there is an avenue for that. It's just whether or not it gets to this place where maybe at some point China says, I'm not negotiating anymore. This is what it is. Do people call us bluff at some point? And we just have to wait.
Okay, thank you for that. Moments ago in the Oval Office, the president spoke to this. Now, the market's already closed, but I'm sure he knows the markets went down and doesn't like that. So the president was asked, and maybe we'll have the video for you.
We have a bite ready, Mark. If you want to play it.
Let's play. I don't need to read what the president said. Ladies and gentlemen, the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald John Trump, on China and a possible meeting with Xi. Please roll tape, Sam.
You canceled your meeting with President Xi, and
No, I haven't canceled, but I don't know that we're going to have it. But I'm going to be there regardless, so I would assume we might have it. But they hit the world with something that really is not anything that people are going to do, and it was shocking. I can tell you, Howard and I and Todd, we all Scott, we were all speaking about it before, and we said, where did that come from? It was just. That was out of the blue, right? Out of the blue, they came up with this whole import-export concept, and nobody knew anything about it.
All right, we could keep talking about this, but there's so many other stuff to get to. We want to get to your questions, and we need 3 new ones, so please raise your hand if you've never been on the program. Let's switch to the Middle East. The ceasefire has begun. Number one, New York Times headline. Still a lot of questions about exactly how phase 1 and phase 2 are going to work. But still a lot of optimism, not a lot of discouraging words being heard or discouraging signs. New York Times, Gaza ceasefire begins. Israel says as thousands return to the north. That's the north of Gaza.
We have some sound he just said, if you want.
Of this, let's play that. The president's in the Oval Office. Let's play that.
He wanted it. It's been a long time. He's been fighting a long time. He's been fighting hard. He wanted it. It's a great deal for Israel, but it's a great deal for everybody, for Arabs, for Muslims, for everybody, for the world. And as you know, on Monday, the hostages come back. They're getting them now. They're getting them now. They're in some pretty rough places under earth. They're in some pretty rough places where only a few people know where they are, in some cases. So they're getting them, and they're also getting the bodies, approximately 28 bodies. And some of those bodies are being unearthed right now as we speak. They're working on it right now as we speak. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. No, he was very happy with it. And I can tell you that I saw Israel dancing in the streets, but they were dancing in Qatar and Saudi Arabia and UAE and many, many countries. I saw Egypt. They were dancing. I'll be going to Israel. I'll be speaking at the Knesset, I think, early on, and then I'm also going to Egypt. They were terrific. But all of the countries were great. Indonesia was great. Jordan was great. They were all great. Everybody wants this deal to happen.
Yeah. All right. Let's probably market a couple of things, then I want to open up to you all to see what you think about how this is going. First, from our friends at Pie Market, again, wagering market, the people bet on all sorts of things, including politics and geopolitics. Here's number 5, please, Sam. Will Israel withdraw from Gaza this year? And as you can see, it's been up and down over the course of the last few days. And now 21% chance that Israel withdraws from Gaza. That seems low to me. 21%, only 21%. It's been down. It was only as high as 25. It's skepticism that they're actually going to withdraw despite the deal. And then Polymarket, one other thing, after the announcement yesterday that there'd be 200 American forces in the region, not necessarily in Gaza, will there be U.S. forces in Gaza this year? There we go. Only a 15% chance, but you see that it's spiked up very low over the course of over the summer into the fall, and then after the announcement, still only 15% chance think there will be U.S. forces in Gaza. That surprises me too. Okay, Sammy, you can take that down, and let's start talking about this. Frank, what's your general view of the deal? How confident are you about it? What concerns do you have about it?
I think it's I think it's an incredible deal. I think it's really very interesting to watch. You got talked about this a little bit this morning, to watch Democrats respond to a Trump achievement on this front. I think it's hard not to give him credit for putting the kind of pressure on Netanyahu that should have happened maybe quite a while ago. So I think I think so far so good. I think the other side. We all know deals in the Mideast and settlements and negotiations in the Mideast don't always hold. So I think we all kind of are looking at it with our fingers crossed.
Yeah, well said. Beverly.
Tremendous success. I think when it comes to President Trump's foreign policy, it really is the most successful thing that he has done, both first term and this term, the Abraham Accords. Now you look at this peace deal. For him to bring together Turkey, Jordan, Qataris, and he listed other people, to be able to bring these individuals and countries together and come to a solution to put pressure on Hamas and also put pressure on Israel to come to a deal is tremendous. And of course, none of this would have happened if Trump hadn't taken that decisive strike against the nuclear capabilities of Iran. So there is so much leading up to this. And I would even say those who have called President Trump a Nazi, when you look at the peace that he is bringing to this region, I really think people need to take a hard look at that type of rhetoric, because he really has been a peacemaker in this region.
Jill, I wrote this morning in my newsletter that what I called the holy trinity of the Gang of 500, David Ignatius, Tom Friedman, and Peggy Noonan, all praised President Trump for this deal. It seems, at least in the moment, like the establishment loves this. What are your concerns about what's happened, if any?
Well, I think it could be a huge breakthrough, but in journalism, the lead would be, a big success for the president, a breakthrough of possibly, historic dimensions. But then there is the to be sure graph, which Mark, very well too.
One of my favorite jokes.
Right.
The to be sure paragraph.
Sure, there are a lot of challenges to make this whole. Then to kind of quote Beverly, we just don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know if it will.
Yeah. Magic seems very concerned about this moving around back there. I'm going to speed to other topics because I want to make sure we get questions in. So let me give a quick word from another sponsor, and then we're going to switch to some other really interesting stories. Get your questions soon. If you've never been on the program, please raise your hand. Fad diets are a big mistake. You weight cycling rather, up and down, gaining 10 pounds, losing 10 pounds. Every doctor will tell you that is not healthy, can lead to all sorts of problems. Risk of diabetes and stroke and heart attack. Weight cycling, and you lose weight and gain weight, is what happens when you don't do it the right way. Many people now turning to those GLP-1 injectables, but there's another way. Non-prescription lean, created by doctors, helps you, as with an oral supplement, helps you maintain healthy blood sugar, control appetite and cravings, help burn fat by converting it to energy. So if you want to try to lose weight in a safe and effective way, works for many. Go to at a healthy pace and keep the weight off. Go to takelean.com. Use the promo code TWOWAY, 20% off your purchase. Again, takelean.com. Go to the website, explain to you how it works. Takelean.com. Use the promo code TWOWAY for 20% off your entire purchase. All right, I want to get to this because this is so interesting. They announced yesterday that the First Lady was going to make an announcement, and they didn't say what it was, and word didn't leak out, and there was all sorts of speculation about what it would be. It's quite interesting, and it's unlike anything really that she's done. Here's number 16. This is Melania Trump talking about her direct communication with Vladimir Putin to bring children back out of captivity and reunite them with their families.
President Putin and I have had an open channel of communication regarding the welfare of these children. For the past 3 months, both sides have participated in several back-channel meetings and calls, all in good faith. We have agreed to cooperate with each other for the benefit of all people involved in this war.
Kind of amazing. Here's one more thing I want to apply, Mark, and then throw it up into you all about what you think about what the First Lady did. This is 17. Will there be a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine this year? Poly market wagerers were asked to put down only 11% chance, they say, and you can see it's gone down from February, not unilaterally or not unidirectionally, but it's gone down to only 11%. And the First Lady doing this in the context now of her husband and others not really having a lot of interaction with Putin. I'll just throw it up to all three of you. Your thoughts on what the First Lady has done, how much it surprises you, what good you might think can come of it. I just throw it open if any of you want to comment on that.
I'll just jump in really quickly. I think it's amazing that she's bringing this to the news, a press conference. There has been some reporting on the children that have been abducted by Russia, these Ukrainian children. But for her to make it a big focus, to work directly with Putin, I think everybody can agree, regardless of political party, we want to get those children to their families. So I'm just glad she's putting a spotlight on it and bringing it to the world's attention.
Yeah, well said. Anybody else?
I agree with what everything Beverly just said. I think if I'm remembering correctly here, this really had its instigation with kind of the little handwritten letter that Trump delivered to Putin in Alaska. So it's and initially Putin's response to that seemed not to be as encouraging as it is now. So it's got you've got to be excited to see children being reunited with their families. There's nothing to debate about that.
Yeah, Jill?
Agree, but I think it's very surprising to see the First Lady jumping in and maybe even taking a lead role in a substantive policy matter with, a leader that her husband is having no luck sort of using his bludgeon with.
Yeah, I can't think of any historical analog that fits this. And again, I wonder how much longer it will go on. And of course, the backstory will be interesting. All right, a few more news items, then we're going to get to your questions. Please raise your hand if you've never been on the program, want to get in the conversation. Number 12, House and Senate gone. There's no prospect of an agreement this week, rest of today or this weekend. Here's the CNBC headline: Trump administration begins layoffs of federal workers amidst government shutdown. The head of the OMB, Russ Vought, tweeted that layoffs were beginning. Not clear exactly how much they'll be. Here is Speaker Johnson and then Leader Jeffries. We can play these back to back, Sam. 14 and 15, framing the issue today, as they have almost every day of the shutdown, by doing public appearances.
I'll turn it back over to the leader. We take some questions, but we've heard, and many of you have reported already, this Hate America rally that they have coming up for October 18th. The Antifa crowd and the pro-Hamas crowd and the Marxists, they're all going to gather on the mall. We got some House Democrats selling T-shirts for this event. It is an outrageous gathering for outrageous purposes, but the Democrats in the Senate have shown that they're afraid of that crowd, that they don't want to bow, that they want to bow to them, bow the knee to them, and they don't want to take incoming from them. And so they're willing to hold the American people hostage so that they don't have to face an angry mob that's a big chunk of their base. Now, if that's a rumor, they need to come out and clarify that it's not, but that is what we are hearing is their actual motivation, and it is outrageous. All this has got to come to an end.
Wow.
You're already seeing paychecks missed, soldiers lining up at food kitchens. Are you concerned that this fight for health care that Democrats are waging here might end up hurting Americans the longer the shutdown drags out?
Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They decided to shut the government down. Republicans in the House have decided to remain on vacation. Republicans canceled votes last week, they canceled votes this week, and now they've canceled votes next week. They're not serious about reopening the government. Republicans aren't even serious about paying our active duty troops.
But they have voted for temporary government funding legislation.
Republicans have voted for a partisan spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people.
Beverly, the only game I hate more than the Washington blame game is Chutes and Ladders.
Yeah.
Never really liked Chutes and Ladders. I'd love for each of you, before we go to questions, just where do you think we're headed here? How long will this last? How do you think it might end?
I just want to first start by saying what Hakeem Jeffries is saying is just not true. There have been many votes that have been called, and Democrats continue to hold their ground and not want to vote for this clean CR. But the whole, the Russ Vought OMB side, I think, is fascinating about the rifts, these reductions in force that are happening from a public perception standpoint. So this was a lever that Russ Vought claimed he may move forward with, well, okay, if you don't want to fund government, we're going to take those non-essential workers and we may tell them that they're laid laid off. This was something he talked about. You had the president actually tweet out an edited video last week that depicted him as the Grim Reaper. And so I'm wondering, I think Republicans have won the messaging battle as far as this is a clean CR, let's move forward, because Democrats have wanted to add $1.5 billion to this, including what Republicans' narrative is, which is true, healthcare for illegal immigrants. So I think Republicans have won so far. This is like Doge 2.0, and I'm just wondering how it's going to be perceived with the layoffs. So I think that's a really interesting part of this.
Yeah, and of course, some Republicans had urged the administration not to go forward. Frank, you write beautifully and pointedly about all this stuff. What's your view of Beverly's view on all this?
We don't agree much on this one. So I think from the Democratic point of view, I think, and I think that the Democrats have done a couple of smart things here, which has been unusual this year, honestly. But focusing on healthcare obviously has been a really a key part of the Democratic strategy, and I think actually the Republicans have kind of lost a little bit on the kind of clean CR conversation. Senate politicians from both sides of the party, both sides of the aisle, tend to speak in Senate speak. Clean CR, I don't think conveys very much to very many people. If they had said, hey, we want to keep everything exactly the way it is, all we're looking for is a little more time to negotiate, that might have been more compelling. I think the Speaker Johnson has his facts wrong about No King's Day, obviously, but also people think that Schumer and Jeffries are being contained by the Democratic base, and obviously there's some tension there. But I think the thing to remember about this from a Democratic point of view is this is a chance for Democrats to prove that they are fighting for working class families on something that really matters to them, which is their ability to actually have health care for their families. So I think that's a really powerful argument, and I think it will ultimately kind of prevail.
Jill.
I have to say I agree with Frank, all the points that he made. And, I've looked at the recent polls on this, and it looks like the Democratic message is getting through, and that people, think the Republicans, I hate this war of who's to blame, but it looks like the Republicans are taking the heat on who's to blame.
By some margin, not clear how much. Curtis, unmute if you would. Curtis, have you been on this show before?
I have not. I am brand new to the show.
Curtis, you're taking us 1/3 of the way to saving the program. I'm going to read one more spot from one more sponsor and then call on Curtis. And then I'll need two more of you who've never been on the show before to raise your hand, or this will be the last episode. The good thing about it being the last episode is that Jill, Beverly, and Frank will be able to tell all their relatives that they were on the last episode. That's not nothing. But probably we want to keep the program going. So stand by. One more word for one more sponsor, and then we'll get to your questions. This is CB Distillery. Nights when you can't sleep or are feeling pain or maybe just sort of out of sorts. Over 2 million people have turned to the products of CB Distillery as a solution for what is bothering them. Work with your body to deal with stress and pain and fatigue after exercise, after a hard night. Made with the highest quality, clean ingredients, not fillers, just premium CBD. Imagine waking up feeling rested and starting your day without aches and pains. That is the potential for so many, the real win of CB Distillery solutions. So right now, go to cbdistillery.com. Again, the promo code, same as before, two-way for 25% off your entire order. Again, feeling good is not easy for everyone, particularly if you're having trouble sleeping. Go to cbdistillery.com, use the promo code two-way, cbdistillery.com, promo code two-way. Of course, tell them Magic sent you. Thank you for your attention to this matter. All right, here we go. Program will be saved because I have confidence in this community. Curtis, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are. Maybe tilt your camera down so we can see more than the top of your head. And what's on your mind for Beverly and Jill and Frank?
Thank you very much. I live a little town called Cumming, Georgia, which is north of Atlanta.
Yes, sir.
And I am a bit of a unicorn. I am a public school teacher and a pretty hardline conservative.
I bet you mention that in the faculty lounge all the time.
Never a word, no, sir.
Yeah, okay.
And the question I have is about that conservatism. I have been a Republican conservative since my father got fired from Lockheed because Carter shut down the defense contracts in the early 80s. And that convinced me that government and business should never mix. And so watching what is going on with Trump, and I'm a Trump voter, I voted for him. But watching what's going on with Trump and the sort of the definition of conservatism, Trump is not a Reagan conservative. He's not a Bush conservative. He is some blend of conservative and, frankly, socialist because of his meddling with the economy, the relationships that he takes with economies. And the wonder that I have is when Trump goes away and Vance is the assumptive nominee and assumptive winner, if I look at polls going today, Vance is no particular conservative either if you look at conservatism by the Reagan and Bush models. And so what will happen to conservatism as these parties keep going forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. And of course, you alluded to some things, but there are lots of things President Trump, particularly in this term, has done that aren't the least bit conservative by normal standards. Frank, why don't you start, then Jill, then Beverly. I'd love for you all to just, you can ask Curtis questions if you'd like, but otherwise just respond to what he said if you would.
So I think it's an interesting question. I think, I think President Trump doesn't come from a systematic ideological perspective. He comes from a very kind of personal gut instinct perspective. And I think it would be very hard for the Republican Party to sustain that because beyond Trump, because it's the defining principles of Trumpism are not very clear.
Beverly.
Well, Curtis, I'll just say I agree with you. So I'm a Reagan conservative. So I have lots of thoughts about Trump and how he approaches things, even though I'm very happy with so much of what he has done. I will say it was a significant pick when he picked J.D. Vance because it showed me the trajectory that the party may potentially go. I'll even say with the Charlie Kirk assassination, he did have that Christian nationalism, populist approach, and the young people that he led. I'm wondering if MAGA is more than Trump these days. Now, my hope is somebody like a Marco Rubio, who, by the way, I think the best thing that has happened to Marco Rubio are all those memes about him getting a new job. And I'm sure we've all seen it where he looks really tired and they've given him a new job. I think that works for him because it shows he's working hard. I would like to go back to more of a Tom Cotton, Marco Rubio. I'm not sure if they could win, but I do think if you get J.D. Vance, you get more of the Trump direction, but he's going to have more ideology behind it, where Trump is, like you said, it's more pragmatic gut instinct on his part.
Jill.
Well, Curtis obviously, adheres to a very traditional kind of conservatism, which, right now is on the minority and losing end of the conservative movement. The more populist part of the base, of Trump's base, is dominant. And, the sort of classic conservatives, there are a few of them left, but they're certainly in retreat right now. They're not dominant on the idea end or in the governing end.
Yeah, Curtis, if you could make anybody president you wanted who was constitutionally eligible and alive, who would you pick?
First name that came to my mind was Rand Paul.
How do you feel about how do you feel about Governor Kemp? Is he conservative enough for you?
He is. I think that Kemp and his fights with Trump, if you remember that from both 16 and the last election.
Yeah.
Kemp is such a Georgian, cares about Georgia and worries about Georgia, that I'm not sure that his appeal would run nationally. But if he was the president, then I think he would run it from a conservative point of view, especially fiscally.
Yeah. What do you teach, Curtis?
I teach government and economics.
Awesome. Thank you for being part of Two Way. Grateful to you for coming on.
You bet. Had a great time.
Thank you. Thank you. Charles, have you been on this show before?
Never.
Never. Thank you for raising your hand and getting us 2/3 of the way to saving the program. Welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind.
I'm in Joplin, Missouri.
Beautiful place.
Not too far from what was the Confederate capital of the state of Missouri. One
Yes,
time,
sir.
Neosho, Missouri,
Yes,
where
sir.
I was born. I'd just like to say that I appreciate this way to speak and get a chance for everyone to voice their opinion. I get pretty upset at listening to people that want to say what they want to say, but they don't want to hear you. I believe that Trump is doing a good job, not perfect. I think what he's done with the Gaza episode is great. I just think that this is the greatest country on earth. And I would be first one. I was in the U.S. Navy for 4 years, enjoyed every bit, went to a lot of places. But I really appreciate everyone's efforts to try to bring this country together. And that's all I really wanted to say.
All right, Charles, I much appreciate that. I'm going to ask you one question, take advantage of your experience, and thank you for serving like you did. If President Trump said, Charles, I saw you on Two-Way tonight, and you seem like a wise gentleman, what would be one piece of advice you'd give the president if he asked you for one piece of advice about how to do his job better?
Well, for me, it would be maybe not so much output from him verbally. Sometimes he gets himself in trouble.
Yeah.
And I just think that if he keeps his nose and wheels going in the right direction, that hopefully we'll come out on the winning end of all of this. And when I say we, I mean everyone.
Yeah. Charles, have they had a production of Hamilton in Joplin yet?
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
They might. I'm sorry. They might have had.
Yeah. You didn't see it? There's a great line in Hamilton. Talk less, smile more.
That's a great word of advice.
It is. Any folks, Beverly, Jill, Frank, anybody want to ask Charles any questions?
No, but Mark, I thought of the same thing.
I'm trying to follow that. The other line is you never learn anything while you're talking. But I think Donald Trump believes he learns from talking because he's listening to himself. Very grateful to you. Very grateful to you, Charles, for being part of Two-Way and for coming on.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're 2/3 the way there. Now, I have a horrible memory, but I believe, Ryan, you've been on the show before, right? You just thumbs up. You have been, and I know Tom's been on. Wallace, have you been on this show? Thumbs up. Have you been on this show? No. Wallace says he hasn't. Maybe he's been on the morning meeting, but I feel like I recognize Wallace. Hold on, Wallace. Go ahead and unmute. Have you been on this show?
I have not been on the afternoon show. No.
All right. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be back Monday. Thank you very much. Good night. All right. Welcome in, Wallace. Thank you for being part of it. Go ahead.
What an honor to save your show, because I wanted to compliment you on how good a job you do personally, Mark. I appreciate the fact that you don't sell out raid. My wife and I, yesterday, we watched the interview you did of Leland.
Yeah. Did you cry as I did?
Brought tears to my eye. Yes, it was a very inspiring interview. We're headed out to go buy the book tomorrow.
That's awesome. I'm sorry to interrupt. Leland Vitter was on my Next Up show, and he's the anchor at News Nation. He's written a book about dealing with autism. He was diagnosed as having a problem when he was 5 years old. His family was told really nothing you can do. Just going to have to go through life without friends and not really being fitting in. And his dad, luckily, was in a position to do this. Quit his job as a businessman and just spent the next 20 years teaching his son how to deal with people, even with autism. And it's an incredible story. And it's a great story about Leland, but it's really a story for any parent. If your kid has a challenge, don't give up and don't listen to advice from people about giving up or even advice about what to do. You got to be really proactive. And I'm not crying now because I've been through it already, but every time I hear Leland talk about his dad, I get emotional. And whilst I appreciate you mentioning it and mentioning the book, Leland was here on this program the other night, but it's an incredible story. And again, I recommend every parent buy the book. If you have a connection to your kids and are worried about anything about any challenge they face, this is an extraordinarily inspiring story. So thank you for that, Wallace, and for your kind words. And please, the floor is yours again.
Okay, there's so many things I would like to say, but the topic right now I would like to bring up is with all the unrest across the country, particularly with the antagonism towards ICE and the rhetoric that you hear from Mayor Pritzker, Mayor Johnson and Governor Pritzker and Governor Newsom and Mayor Bass, reminds me of reading about the civil rights era when particularly like Ole Miss riots in 1962. And I listened to some of the quotes of some of the leaders from the South, and I read them, and it mirrored pretty much what I hear from these Democratic leaders in these big cities and these big states, these blue states. And that does concern me. They make a big deal about Trump sending 500 troops or 500 guardsmen to, say Los Angeles or Portland. But I didn't realize this until I read it, but I guess President Kennedy sent over 30,000 troops to Ole Miss in 1962. So I guess my question would be is for the three of you is how do you see these parallels and how that plays out today?
Yeah, that is a great question. Let's start with Jill.
I don't really see many parallels because I'm not convinced that there's, a crisis in these cities. And because of that, I understand why mayors and governors don't want ICE coming in. Yeah, sure, they make arrests. There are undocumented immigrants in large numbers in big cities. That's not all that surprising. And it isn't a crisis or a national emergency. I think during the civil rights movement, that was a true crisis in Mississippi and Alabama with, Governor Wallace standing, at the door barring the registration of Black students. I don't really see a parallel.
Frank.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think some of the rhetoric about like Portland being a war zone and things like that is not helpful. I guess when I look at the ICE stuff and the Trump policy on sort of sending troops in, what I think most about is kind of a lost opportunity, because I think there would be a real genuine opportunity for local and state people who are dealing with crime and the federal government to sort of find some way to sort of intervene in a more useful way. I think that's the opportunity that's lost in the contentiousness of the way in which this has been approached.
Beverly.
Yeah, you mind if I make?
Go ahead, Wallace. Absolutely, go ahead.
President Kennedy addressed the nation when they went into Ole Miss, and if I recall, he told the nation that Americans have the right to disagree with federal law, but they don't have a right to disobey federal law. So my concern is, and where I see the parallel is, you have these cities and states that are disobeying federal law when it comes to immigration and shielding these immigrants, these illegal immigrants, and then actively trying to prevent ICE from arresting them. It seems to me that's the parallel I guess I'm drawing. And I guess as far as the importance between one or the other, I don't want to equate the civil rights era with this, but it just seems to me the states are trying to subvert federal law.
Yeah, Beverly.
Yeah, and the comparison I would make is what is federal authority versus what is state and local authority from a federalism standpoint. Of course, President Trump has the authority in Washington, D.C. He has the authority when there are riots and you have federal law enforcement that are being attacked. He has the right when the governor of Tennessee wants him to come in. There's a problem when it comes to him going into certain states. That being said, I wish we had law enforcement wanting to work with and elected officials wanting to work with the president. Unfortunately, this comes down to the leaders of Chicago or Illinois hating the president so much that they're not willing to work with him because there is a crime problem in Chicago that does need to be addressed. So I would say from the rhetoric standpoint, it's the rhetoric against the president, which sometimes he is at fault of that as well. So it can go both ways. But I'd say the rhetoric that has really been concerning is the rhetoric towards ICE officials, towards people just doing their job. And that's where I find it unacceptable. So I just think there's a lot of nuance and a lot of factors at play. But when you have your elected officials, leaders speaking to each other in this way, it is setting a precedent for the rest of the country to follow. And I personally don't think that's the direction to go from a rhetoric standpoint.
The leaders of our country back then spoke to each other in similar ways. It wasn't quite so vitriolic, but
yeah. They didn't have social media. Wallace, thank you. Grateful to you. Tell everybody at work on Monday you saved the show.
I'm sorry?
Tell everybody at work on Monday you saved the show.
I will do that.
Okay. Wallace, thank you. For most of my career, I've said I never make predictions because there's no mileage in making predictions. It's kind of not very journalistic. But when you host 12 hours a week of shows, got to fill them up. So sometimes I make predictions. I had thought, and it's a little bit tongue in cheek, I thought that the president would blast whoever won the Nobel Peace Prize as being completely unworthy of it and go on social media, whatever. So almost this entire time we've been talking here, the president's been talking in the Oval Office to reporters, and he was asked about this woman from Venezuela who won the Nobel Peace Prize. Charles, I hope you're still there. I see your camera's on, but I don't see you. Here is a very, very gracious Donald Trump talking about his phone call with the woman who won the Nobel Peace Prize in his stead. Please roll 1F.
The person who actually got the Nobel Prize called me and said, I'm accepting this in honor of you because you really deserved it. That a very nice thing to do. I didn't say then give it to me though. I think she might have. She was very nice. And I've been helping her along the way. They need a lot of help in Venezuela. It's a basic disaster. So, and you could also say it was given out for 24, and I was running for office in 24. All of the transactions that we did in terms of closing. But there are those that say we did so much that they should have done it. But I don't take. I'm happy because I saved millions of lives.
What a gracious man. Frank, lovely, right?
Yeah, that was, and the graciousness actually started with her. She earlier today made that point and really kind of reached out to Trump. I didn't know she'd made the phone call, but it's actually nice to see those kinds of exchanges kind of being in the spirit of the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah,
Mark, we know there's always next year, and the sure way that the president would have not gotten the Nobel Peace Prize next year.
If this holds, he'll get it, right?
Trashing, the winner for mainly 2024. The Gaza peace deal happened, too late. I think they'd made this choice already.
Didn't Barack Obama get the Nobel Prize in 2009?
That was ridiculous.
Okay, but my point is that year they voted not just for that year's activities, but for that year's no activities.
Right.
Right.
I agree. I mean, even Obama himself.
Yeah, thought it was ridiculous. But again, that shows you just how gracious Donald Trump was there. I don't know. I mean.
I agree.
Maybe he had a colonoscopy and he was still a little loopy.
I don't think so.
Because by the way, amongst the many stories we didn't get to cover in this hour when the show is being saved is he spent 4 hours at Walter Reed today getting some sort of medical exam, and they've given no readout whatsoever about that. Jill, if you could call your old friend Dr. What's his name?
Dr. Altman. Yeah.
No, Dr. Lawrence K. Altman. Yeah, we need him more than ever. Literally the only medical journalist in the history of modern America who's understood the responsibility of the media to hold presidents and presidential candidates accountable for their health. And I mean, now we're headed into I don't think it's a coincidence he did this on a Friday, frankly, because now he's going to go to the Middle East and we may never get a readout of the thing.
And on, the clips that you played, he sounds really tired.
Yeah, he's been working hard, but maybe just that's a good gracious Trump is tired Trump or vice versa. I don't know. Beverly, always love when you're here. Jill, so glad you've come back and hope you'll make it a habit. And Frank, you're every bit as awesome on live video as you are on your Substack. Tell everybody again the name of the Substack.
It's 2026 Path to Persuasion.
Path to Persuasion. I'm telling y'all, and Frank, what do you charge for that thing?
Free.
Free. Okay. Can't beat the
Mark?
price. Yes, Jill.
One thing, as you can see, we didn't succeed in holding Magic's attention for the whole show.
Yeah.
Where is she?
Good question. Magic slipped away. Yeah, I noticed at one point I glanced up and we were magicless. That's going to happen sometimes. It's going to happen. Thank you all for being here. A few reminders. Next week, David Bonson and I, Tuesday, I think I have this right. Maybe if there's a graphic that can help me. Tuesday at 4 o'clock, special for the two-way community only. This won't be on YouTube. So if you want to be part of a private conversation about the economy, we're going to focus on AI, but we'll talk about tariffs and everything else that's going on. Join me and David Bonson of the Bonson Group Tuesday, October 14th. Right? Tuesday, October 14th, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And also sign up for David's newsletter, The Dividend Cafe. It costs exactly what Frank's newsletter costs. Free. Go to tway.tv/TBG, the Bonson Group, to sign up now for that. You can also buy shirts just like this with the two-way logo, and on the sleeve our catchphrases. This one says "No smack in the chat." You can get these at tway.tv/fairway, tway/TV/fairway. Very grateful to all of you for being here. Very grateful for the three of you. Save the show. Tell your grandkids about it. And I'll be back, unless there's breaking news over the weekend, I'll be back Monday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time with Sean and Dan for the morning meeting. Thanks to Jill, Beverly, Frank, and all of you. Good night. Good luck. And go Brewers.